Welcome back to the Dad Central Show, where our goal is to connect, inspire, and support dads to be their best while bringing out the best in their family. And we do this by hosting candid conversations with fatherhood role models, topical experts, and real dads to give you the tools you need for the most important role you'll ever have. I'm your host, Drew Solon, and today we're continuing our captivating conversation with a true Renaissance man, Coach Bill Courtney. So Coach Bill Courtney is not only the president and CEO of Classic American Hardwoods, which is a prominent lumber company with 130 employees, but was also a dedicated high school football coach. His remarkable journey was brought to the silver screen in the Oscar-winning documentary Undefeated, which follows an underrated high school football team in one of the poorest areas of the United States, the Manassas Tigers. The documentary chronicles his role as coach and mentor to the mostly fatherless young men on the team as they fight their way to an extraordinary season. Now, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. It's truly a wonderful testament to Coach's leadership on and off the field. So in part 2 of our conversation, we get into the coaching experience that caught the world's attention. We uncover the pivotal moments, the challenges, and the transformative power of mentorship that were highlighted in the film Undefeated. But that's not all. Coach Courtney's insights go far beyond the football field. We explore his thoughts on leadership, which are gleaned from his many roles, and how those principles can resonate in all aspects of life, especially as dads. There's also something new on the horizon for Coach Bill Courtney. It's his latest project, An Army of Normal Folks, which is a thought-provoking podcast where he talks with everyday people doing extraordinary things. We get an exclusive sneak peek into the stories, the motivation, and the ideas that drive this exciting new show. So, whether you're a sports enthusiast, a business leader, a parent, or simply someone who craves inspiration, this episode is a must-listen. Join us as we continue our conversation with the remarkable Coach Bill Courtney in this episode of the Dad Central Show. But maybe we can transition and talk a little bit about, the aspect of coaching and working with developing young men, and young men who, maybe had an experience like yours or even more traumatic growing up. And, what is maybe can you talk just a little about that experience, maybe how you got into, coaching at Manassas, and then what it was like for you early on, that experience. You seem goal-oriented, driven. You had high expectations, I would imagine, for yourself. And then you come into a pretty challenging situation. And so talk to us about that, what that was like. And then I would really love to get into the idea of, how you were able to bring that transformation within both, the young men you coach, but also within the team.
So I always coached. And when I started my business, I thought, I'm probably going to have to take a couple years away from it. And it's just, I'm in manufacturing and I needed industrial property. And North Memphis was the one place you could find really cheap property because it's kind of a rough area. And so that's why I started my business, because I could buy cheap property. And through a odd set of circumstances, Manassas is only a mile from my lumber yard, from my plant. And an opportunity came up to go over there for spring practice for 2 weeks and just help out. And I thought, well, that'll wet my whistle. And that 2 weeks turned into 7 years. And what I found, like I said earlier, was 17 kids and a program, if you want to call it a program, that won 4 games in 10 years. Abject poverty, no real equipment, not very much coaching or instruction going on, but a bunch of really eager kids that, despite the demographics of North Memphis are horrific. A 21-year-old male is 3 times more likely to be incarcerated or in jail. An 18-year-old male is 3 times more likely to be incarcerated in jail by his 21st birthday than he is to have a job. Fewer than 50% of the people in the neighborhood have a car. Only 1.3% of the people in the neighborhood have a college diploma. Fewer than only 70% or so have a GED or high school diploma. I think 87% of the people in the neighborhood rent. A very high percentage of people named the grandmother as the head of the household.
Hmm.
It's I think the fifth poorest zip code in the United States, and per capita, I think it's the first or second most dangerous zip code. Gang ridden. It's a bad area. Like I said, cheap industrial property. That's why I'm here. And so when we started 20 something years ago, and so that's what I found. And because of the news and movies and the sensationalism of communities like that spread across all of the urban areas in our country, I kind of had a preconceived notion of what to expect. And that notion was completely vaporized by the kids I found. Yes, sir. No, sir. Just wide-eyed, desperate to be part of anything positive. Yeah, poor, tatted up, all black, gang-ridden, all of that. But who they were as kids, no different than any kids I'd ever coached anywhere else. Rural, suburban, just kids. Just kids that wanted to be held accountable, that wanted to be part of something bigger themselves, that wanted to have something positive going on, that wanted to win, that wanted to compete. If you could just level the playing field and give them a chance. And so we started coaching, and we started coaching football, but we also started coaching basic tenets and fundamentals like character and commitment, integrity and leadership and teamwork and civility and the dignity of hard work. And all of the things that I think should define a meaningful life long after the days of playing are over. And about halfway through the season, we were 3-3 that first year. Now, I think 3-3 is pretty average, but when you've won 4 games in 10 years, you know, they thought I was a fat, redheaded version of Pete Carroll or something. And so, yeah. So, and the whole team, yes or no, sir, buying in the football, but half the team was buying into all those other tenets I was talking about. The other half the team, though, was yes or no, sir, respectful and doing everything I asked them to do on the football field. The football field was over. They were back into the streets, and it was driving me nuts. And so I went to my guy. You know, every coach has a guy. So I went to my guy and I said, hey, man, what do I got to do to get that half the team to buy into the important stuff like you're half the team? I mean, y'all are all good on the football stuff, but the important stuff, I'm only reaching about half of you. What do I got to do? And this is the guy that I had real talks about throughout the season about a lot of stuff. And he was always real candid and open with me. But when I asked him this, he dismissively just said, oh, coach, just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, no, man, real talk. He said, coach, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I said, you are not going to hurt my feelings. Why can I get that half the team to buy into the important stuff like your half team? He said, all right, coach, you're trying to figure out if you're a turkey person or not. And I mean, I got to tell you, I learned a lot of phrases and vernacular in my first 8 weeks at Manassas that I'd never used in my life or heard before. But I said, what are you talking about? He said, coach, every Thanksgiving and Christmas, people roll into our neighborhoods and they give us gifts and hams and turkeys, and we take them because we ain't got none. But then they leave and we never see them again. And it makes you wonder if they're doing that because they really care about us, or they're doing that to make themselves feel good. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, coach, really, what the hell are you doing here? And I want to say something real quick. If you or your listeners serve soup in a soup kitchen or give away turkeys at Thanksgiving or Christmas or something, it's a beautiful thing. It's not what it's about. It's about motive. See, was I coaching there because it made me feel good? Was I coaching there because it was filling a hole in me? Was I coaching there because when I went to the suburbs to my neighborhood and people heard about what I was doing, they were slapping me on the back saying, man, what a great guy you are for helping those poor folks down in the hood. You know, was I motivated to do the work I was doing because of the way it made me feel, or was I motivated for the simple edification of some people that needed help? Was I motivated by seeing the growth in these kids? So the thing is, kids will always say yes, sir, and no, sir, mostly. And they will always do what you tell them to do if you have a position of authority as a teacher or a coach or a father. But if they recognize in you a motive that is not pure, they will say yes or no, sir. But the minute you turn and walk around, they'll start darts through your back because
Mm.
they are the best at recognizing a fraud. And so the point is, my first year there, you know, there were a lot of socio-demographic differences in me and the kids on that team. I was there 7 years and I saw one white student, one Hispanic student. The team called me Big Daddy Snowflake because I was the only white thing around. All right.
Term
But
of endearment.
it was. But if you watch Undefeated, you'll see race is never discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we drop societal preconceived notions about what they would, when you look at a white dude who owns a big business and is doing well in life and has a wife that's for 30 years and 4 well-adjusted kids going to good schools, you think you know that guy's reality. But I told you how I grew up.
Yeah.
The truth is I identified with the kids of Manassas a lot more readily than I identified with my own children. I didn't grow up the way my own children grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you drop societal preconceived notions and you just go to work together, amazing things can happen. But you can't do that until you're motivated by the right thing, which is success for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, what happened at Manassas that first year is that I got taught by an 18-year-old kid from the hood that if I'm going to be successful as a coach and a mentor and a father and a business owner and a boss and in any other aspect in the world, is I've got to be motivated not by what that work does for me, but by what that work does for everybody surrounding me. And then the payoff is you get 100 times more out of that than what you put into it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that became my approach. Don't be a damn turkey person.
I love the story. I love the story in many fronts, but primarily because of that takeaway message, how important that is, how relevant it is, I'd say, how we can apply that literally every day in some way in our lives, but certainly, in our families. But um, to me, I think that's the core of the question that I had in my mind was, how did you connect? How did you relate to, those young men that you were coaching, and how did they then relate to you? And how did you, because I would imagine, yes, they're respectful, but that was the point, is how do you get the buy-in? How do you get them to follow? And so if there's more you can share about that to me, I think is really powerful, because those are powerful tools that we can use in probably any relationship, but certainly from the what you went through, I think it offers value.
Well, I mean, for me, it was exactly that story. And that over time, the kids got to learn where I came from because I shared my story with them and they start to see me differently. And I really did identify with them. I understood their pain. I
Mm,
understood their look, man, these kids from the hood, a lot of them have to put on a facade, a bravado to survive neighborhoods and stuff. I mean, it's tough. It's a different world, but underneath, they're just the same soft, trying to figure out young kids. And so I understood that because I felt the same way coming up. And
mhm,
so it gave us a commonality to build on. But the other thing I want to say real quick on that question is we got to listen. The person controlling any conversation is the one asking the questions because they're directing where the conversation goes. And anytime you go into a new environment in a leadership or managerial role, and as a father, I think one of the most valuable things you can do is ask questions and shut up and listen. And you will learn goals, dreams, fears, inhibitions, insecurities. And then if you use that role as a manager, a coach, a teacher, a leader, or a mentor, or a father to help those dreams and goals get reached and to help quell those fears and those inhibitions and talk about and help to get rid of those insecurities. When you ask the person you're serving in that way to do something, they're going to quickly make a calculation in their head that, every time this person, this leader, this father, this coach, this teacher, this boss, every time they ask me to do something, it ends up serving me well because they understand me. So if you are now able to ask somebody to do something, they do it because of that service in their life, you are now by definition leading.
Mm.
And you can only get to that point by being motivated by the right things and by listening.
Yeah. I think of two quotes in particular that really relate to what you're sharing. And I've just, one quote is by a mentor of mine, John Maxwell. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that really
True.
relates to what you're talking about right there. And then the other one is by Zig Ziglar. It's, you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And that's what you're talking about there in terms of helping everyone, listening, but that having the right motivation. Like, it's not just about me, it's actually about you or us collectively. And then how do we all get there together, like, successfully? And so very, very powerful, very important. But most importantly, I think of the relationships. We had Jack Armstrong. He's a coach. He's the Toronto Raptors broadcaster. And he gave us this, for me, it was like bulletin board, put on my whiteboard, stick it right there. Remember this as a dad or a leader, as a coach, whatever it is. And it's rules without relationships equals rebellion, whereas rules with relationships equals results. It's, especially when dads can get so focused on rules, the structure, the discipline, if it's absent of that core piece, that relationship, the care, the nurturing, the connection, it kind of misses the mark.
It does. No doubt. All of that is that's all the same idea. And I think if you sum it up, it's called servant leadership. I think you lead by serving. And if you serve and you're motivated by the right things in that service in order to lead and in order to exact some measure of positive change in your family, in your community, in your business, and whatever you're involved in. And if you're motivated and do it the right way, servant leadership is the way positive results happen in all aspects of your life.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this father thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads. Let's talk then about, you got here an army of normal folks. Talk to me about an army of normal folks. How does this relate to what you just talked about? Serving others, creating change. Tell us more about that. And
Like, I think I have no data to suggest what I'm about to say is accurate, except that it's just what I think. I think the vast majority of us in this country, 75%, we may be right, we may be left, but we're center right, center left, center. I think the vast majority of the people in the country are fed up with the division in DC, and they're fed up with the division coming out of social media and, frankly, out of our national media. You can watch any major news event in the country and watch CNN and Fox, and it's like two completely different things happened. And anybody with common sense can look at what happened and say, oh, that's what happened. But you watch that, it's like two different worlds, right? And I often get asked, because of the movie and the book and the speeches and forums like this, what are we going to do to fix it? The proverbial it.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's neighborhoods that we drive around and we look down the street, or we're on the interstate, we look over the viaduct where we're like, please don't have a flat tire here, because you're scared to death when you look at the poverty and the crime and the disenfranchisement and everything that's associated with those parts of our culture, that you just want to be stranded there, right? And as you pass by and you exhale, you think to yourself, somebody had to do something about that one day, as if the sentiment matters. And I suggest we kick that rearview mirror about 15 degrees to the left and look ourselves in the eyes and say, maybe I ought to do something about that one day. And because of what I was talking about just before, the division in our politics and our media and our social media, government's proven woefully inadequate. The smart people in fancy suits on CNN and Fox, they're not fixing anything. And I would even argue that they are incented by enormous power and wealth. Ask yourself how a guy making $178,000 a year as a House of Representatives serves 6 terms and is now a millionaire. How's that work? And I would say that there's an enormous amount of power and wealth generated in DC and in the national media and social media. And they are incented by that power and wealth to keep us in compartments, to keep us divided, to keep us separated. And because by doing that, like sheep, the most of us latch on to one narrative that we tend to agree with, and then we follow that narrative into that media space and into that political space, and then all of a sudden, like sheep, we're defined by this divisive crap. And I'm tired of it. And so as you're thinking about, what can I do when you cock that rearview mirror instead of somebody maybe I had to? Well, there's thousands of people across our country that are just normal folks doing extraordinary things. We just don't hear about them. And what if we had a literal army of normal folks, not the people in DC and New York, just normal folks like you and me, doing extraordinary work by being servant leaders in their area of the world? What if we knew those stories? What if we could celebrate those stories? What if we could join? I don't care if you're Black, white, Latino, Asian, male, female, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, agnostic, gay, straight. All these divisions and compartments the last couple of decades, we continue to separate ourselves in. I don't care what compartment you find yourself in. We can all celebrate servant leadership and humanity. And so we put together this idea that what if we had an army of normal folks, regardless of who you are, where you come from, how you worship, what you think, or how you vote, that can just celebrate one another doing something extraordinary in their community to serve another person. And so we started this thing called an Army of Normal Folks. It's a podcast, and it's supposed to be redemptive and inspirational and informative and entertaining, but most importantly, it's supposed to be inspiring. And Iron Light Labs is a producer in Chicago, and they go out and find people doing things all over the place. iHeart distributes us, and every episode we find just normal people who've done something extraordinary. We speak with them about who they are so that you can identify them with as a normal person, and then what they've done. And then every guest shares their personal contact information. I share my personal contact information. The producers share their personal contact information. So as you're listening, you will eventually hear a story, because we're talking to people who are doing all manner of different things. You hear a story of something that you have a skill set at, that you have a passion for. I've got after Undefeated and the book and everything else, I get asked a question all the time, which is, I'm so inspired. How do I start? How do I help? And I've never really been able to answer the question. Well, now I do. Listen, be inspired. Hear all these stories. Some will resonate with you in a real personal way. Some won't. Some will just be entertaining. But eventually, you'll hear a story of somebody who does something that you can do and that you're passionate about. And now you have a community, because everybody's sharing all their information in the Army of Normal Folks. You have somebody to reach out to. You have other people to lean on to tell you how they started, the pitfalls they had, whatever they did to be successful. And now there's this army of. Can you imagine what our culture and country would look like if over the course of some time we built hundreds of thousands of people that subscribe to this notion of being a member of the Army of Normal Folks, just doing servant leadership roles on things that they're passionate about, that they have a talent in all over our country? We could take the narrative back that if you don't think, look, vote, and worship like me, you're my enemy. Because there's one thing that we can all celebrate, and it's that. And I just think, to the question, how do we fix the proverbial it's we take back the narrative. Normal folks, we're going to serve, we're going to work in our communities, we're going to do it right. And I really don't care what you think, how you vote, how you worship, because regardless of any of that, if you're doing something good in your community, I can celebrate you and you can celebrate me. And we create this army of normal folks in an effort to not only just be entertaining with the podcast and everything, but a community and a literal army of normal folks to change the inaccurate narrative that if you don't look, think, worship, or vote like me, you're my enemy.
On that note, honestly, that's just a fantastic way for us to finish, because the word that comes to mind is unity, right? You talked the opposite. You said the divisiveness, the division, right? The hatred, the and being an enemy, which is very, I think, as you said, lots of us are tired of that, because we're all humanity, as you said. We all have value, and we should now begin to recognize and begin to celebrate and to be able to honor and live that out on a daily basis. I think that's such a powerful message, but even more so, a great platform to be able to celebrate others and the stories and the impact they're having, and get it out there even more. So, of course, being a dad show, it all starts at home, though. I really reflect on that story you shared of telling your family it's time for you to step away, and your son, and then your recollection of, what, man, I'm failing. I need to be here, present at home with my family, with my children, and influencing them in a way that they need me, so they recognize, and we can relate in that way, in a positive way. So, Coach Bill Courtney, it has been an honor and a pleasure having you on the show. I've loved learning about you, because I didn't know much about your story. And as much as I'm a football person, love football, I hadn't seen Undefeated. And so now it's like a must watch for our family. Movie night, and my kids are going to get, Dad, not another football movie. But anyway, so I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And just sharing with our audience your story. And if it's possible, I'd love to reconnect, because I'd love to have a part two. Ed, my co-host, would add a lot of value in digging into some different aspects, and love to hear more about Army of Normal Folks and the work that's happening and inspiring people there through that. So
I'm humbled and appreciate you having me on. I'll make a deal with you. Watch Undefeated, read Against the Grain, call me back, and we'll talk about a whole bunch of other stuff.
Done. That's
Good.
a great deal. Sounds good for me, Coach.
Once you've done your homework, reach out. We'll be together again.
Well, it sounds good.
All right, buddy.
Coach, have a great day, and thanks so much for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me.